Welcome to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast with your host, Brandon Seigel. I'm a published author, speaker, entrepreneur, and private practice strategist dedicated to transforming the way that healthcare functions. This podcast is all about empowering you to create the change you want to see. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Seigel. I am so glad you tuned in because today we are joined by one of my favorite people. Some of you have met this amazing person, but this is literally like my brother from another mother. I want to invite to our podcast and this episode and several more in the future, Mr. Will Humphreys with Virtual Rockstar.
Hey, Brandon, that is such a great introduction. I love you and your audience. Guys, we are brothers from other mothers, and it's just such a privilege to be on this amazing show.
Well, Will, it's so interesting because your journey and my journey have these like synergies and similarities. And then we also have like totally crazy different experiences as well. But I think like it's almost like parallel universes, but different adventures that we've been on. And one of the things that I think is interesting is just how we each came to the purpose of what we do. And so why not to start, give your background, how you got into where you are today, and just a quick little journey of Will, if that's okay.
Yeah, it all started on a Friday the 13th, 1993, trying to impress my girlfriend by rock climbing without ropes. I was just trying to show off, and I fell 50 feet. 5 stories of a building, broke both arms, both legs, multiple places. I was on this mountain in El Paso, Texas for 5 hours before the helicopter rescue team could pull me off. It was off the mountain and get me down to the ER. Multiple surgeries, lots of intense rehab in the hospital, which was horrible. But there was this home physical therapist named Connie Clemens who stood me up for the first time, cried when I walked. And I just knew I wanted to be in the rehab space. As a juvenile, I was exposed to PT, OT in such a heavy way. And I just thought, man, I want to do something where I get to be a part of this journey of taking people in the darkest nights of their lives and helping them discover the brightness of a new day. And so I started my journey of becoming a physical therapist. I went to UTEP, which is in El Paso, got my degree, and then started a business a year after graduating. Didn't know what I was doing. It was harder than falling off the mountain. Ownership and leadership for me was more painful and more difficult than breaking 21 bones in my body. It was that miserable. And so I almost walked away from my business, Brandon. It was so hard, so difficult, so challenging. And I'm just not like a natural leader. I don't pick up on those things organically. I was a very loving, good provider, but not a good leader owner. And so I started getting into coaching. And then that opened up my whole world. Fast forward, I ended up opening 5 outpatient rehabilitation locations. I merged my company in 2018 with 4 other friends. We ended up creating 26 locations and sold. We got an 8 multiple when we exited. And then ever since then, I've been working so hard to free up the entrepreneurs in the private practice space. I love especially the PT, OT, SLP groups because they are the ones who give their heart in the biggest way and have the worst margins. So that's where Virtual Rockstar was born. My love is people. My love is team building. And so connecting people and building teams into family teams is my passion. It's why I'm on this earth.
Well, I love that. On a sidebar, because I have to sidebar sometimes with you, I love that you went to UTEP. Ironically, I knew of UTEP only because one of my favorite quarterbacks played for UTEP, Jordan Palmer.
Really?
So yeah.
That's a small world. My dad was the associate athletic director at UTEP, and it's so funny because our entire sports division's budget was made by other teams paying us money to go beat them in front of their audiences in crowds, like for homecoming. Notre Dame would give us $1 million to fly us out there and just destroy us in front of their crowd. That's how we made our budget.
Well, and it's funny because I've always been an underdog story guy. I just love my favorite football teams, the Bengals. Jordan Palmer played on the Bengals with his brother Carson Palmer.
Yes.
So I love that. And there's something about just people that go to these grassroots programs and just make their name. And so I love it.
Yeah, that is so great. And I love that underdog story. And it's not unlike what we're doing in the PTOT SLP space, man. I feel like the most powerful like leaders I've ever met, not just in rehab or therapy or medical, in any business industry, are in these PTO TSLPs. You heard me say at your conference how I believe that those leaders are the Navy SEALs of business leaders globally.
Yeah.
They just don't know it. They think they're all like, because they're struggling with their margins, they think they're not great, but they're amazing.
Well, and it's interesting because I was recently writing a job advertisement for a job that we're hiring for. And when I described the person, and I recognized that this is what every private practice needs right now, is what I call the Leatherman multi-tool. We need that person that literally I can just pull out. I need the knife now. I need the scissors. I need the file. I need the screwdriver. And I think like that is what makes great leadership today, is how do we build not only the tools that we operate, but we bring other tool sets in that can do more than one thing. We no longer have the ability to just hire the hammer, so to speak. And so now we're looking for multi-tools in everything and everyone that we bring in. And it's interesting because today we're talking about the virtual assistant revolution, and it has been a revolution. And I think what I've found in the last 10 years has been a revolution, and you may disagree. And really the idea of like, why did we come about this? What was the purpose of it? And where are we at now? Because I think there's three things right now that I feel are changing healthcare, and you can disagree with this, but I think the ability to tap into talent outside of the norm is one, whether that be via virtual telehealth, offshore, onshore. That's a huge component. And I think it's even gotten bigger since COVID. The second is AI. What functions are AI and what functions are people? And one of the statements that I've started saying a lot is that I believe systems run businesses, but people run systems. I believe AI is a system. It's not a people, it's a system. And so then we look at who are the people that are executing the systems. And so when I look at AI and I look at people and I look at all these different functionalities, what I recognize is that everyone's biggest concern is that we are cutting corners. And I actually believe that we are improving the experience. But I think we have to recognize the only people whose experience is not improving are people that don't want to see change. So I say it this way. Do you remember ever watching a movie with like your grandparents or great grandparents?
Absolutely.
Okay. My experience has always been that they only wanted to watch the old movies.
Right.
They wanted to see the black and white. They're like, these are the classics, Brandon.
It's John
We're
Wayne.
going to watch Gone with the Wind for the 100th time, you know? And I'm like, it's not that I don't appreciate Gone with the Wind, but like, Grandpa, like, I'm now into, you know, whatever it may be. Like, I'm trying to think of the movies that I was really into. I loved Back to the Future. Back to the Future was one of my favorite movies. And what I recognize is now I do this to my children. I don't know if you do this, but I'm like, let's not watch like Avengers. Like, let's watch Back to the Future. And my kids are like, no, Dad, we're not watching Back to the Future. Like, and so what I recognize is in today's private practice environment, we have to be willing to adapt that there is a place for the way things were, but in order for us to move to a new destination, we need to recalibrate change in our practice. And I think one of the things we have to look at is, how do we solve the people problem? And so I guess my first question for you, so for those who don't know, I don't know if this is illustrated well, so I want to illustrate it for everyone.
Sure.
Will obviously is a physical therapist. He's owned private practices. He's managed private practices. He's owned multiple different businesses. He's had his hands in every aspect from clinical care to billing to leadership to like succession planning, selling a practice, replacing a practice. So I just want everyone to understand he's cooked with every ingredient needed in this industry. He launched a company around tapping into talent outside of the traditional US-based market and bringing different skill sets to be able to optimize the way that private practices function, where we get greater ROI on the money. I mean, that's ultimately where it comes back to is like, what can I do? How can I do it? And how do I get the best ROI? What people don't recognize is that it used to be 25 years ago, offshore was about cost savings, not about quality. In the last 10 years, and specifically as we move forward in time, it is no longer about cost savings. It's about cost control based on quality control. And so when we look at cost control based on quality control, what we're recognizing now is, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find this person. And oh my gosh, Will just found me an executive assistant that I would pay $50 an hour here to have on the US. But this person actually is more qualified. They value the job in different ways. They're more reliable. And guess what? I'm paying $18 an hour or 20 or 15, depending on where you're at. It's no longer about a $9 an hour job or a $6 an hour function. See, back in the day, the sales cycle was, we'll save you money. We'll get you it for a fraction of the penny. My viewpoint is, from my experience with Will, is this isn't about cost savings. This is about cost control. How can I get you a better product for your budget?
Yes,
Would you
absolutely.
disagree?
It's one of those things that's the biggest misunderstanding is that because like your grandparents used to want to watch Gone with the Wind with you, we're used to what we know. And so what we've known for people overseas is that it is a decrease in the experience for the patients and other team members. We've all been on hold when I've called customer service for a machine at my home and I got sent to clearly overseas. I could barely understand the person's English, and that decreased my affinity and my connection to the company. And I think that's the fears that we're used to the old movie that's been played in our minds around those experiences around outsourcing.
So, Will, obviously in this industry of what we'll say is virtual assistants, we're finding that it's no longer about cost savings. It's more about cost control based on qualitative measures and goals and objectives. So I guess from my vantage point, why don't we start with just telling us a little bit about how you got into this industry and kind of what your original thoughts were? And
Yeah.
did you use virtual assistants when you had your companies, or like
No.
what's your story? Yeah.
Well, I never had VAs when I sold in 2018. That was at that point, that wasn't something that I'd even thought of. So what I ended up doing is I started a medical billing company that I still own. It's a concierge kind of sideline thing. It's not something that's even trying to grow at this point, but it was at the time, it was a way for me to honor an employee who had built my RCM, my revenue cycle, in my PT practice. And so I started a company with her to kind of get my feet back into the industry from a B2B space. And so we started hiring Americans. COVID hits, we grow really big, bigger than she wanted. And I was looking for the thing that I wanted to do to really impact the industry. Meanwhile, we're hiring American medical billing experts and we're not doing very well with it. And Brandon, recruiting's my favorite thing. I love recruiting. And so I decided to pilot this idea of hiring someone overseas, something I swore I'd never do, because in the medical billing space, it's almost cliche. You hire the company, it's overseas, you don't even know who's doing your billing, and it doesn't go well. So I decided to let me hire them and like directly. And so I started an agency and hired my first hires just to work for me. And the first person I hired, her name was Anne, and she cried when I gave her the job. And I remember going, this is different than any hiring experience I'd ever had. She was our best employee. She saved us a lot of money, but she also made us the most. So I found ways to like honor Anne. I was committed to not just like working that relationship like cheap labor. I thought, well, I get to save some money, but maybe I can stand out for her as well. And that grew, Brandon, until we had almost 50 people in the Philippines doing billing. And the thing that I did differently, though, is I introduced Anne to the PT owner that we were helping. And I said, Anne's working your account. And Anne was on all the calls. And Anne had pretty good English. And they loved Anne and they sent Anne a t-shirt. And I just remember thinking, this is so interesting how different this goes compared to how I thought working with VAs would be. And then the big day happened. I was also coaching a group of PTs on how to hire people, because that's, again, my favorite thing. And I had this group of 20 PTs and I was coaching them how to hire. And finally, one of them says, her name was Orit. She goes, I am so tired of hearing you brag about these people in your billing company. Help me do that. And I said, no, I'm too busy. I literally gave her, like, here's the steps of how you hire overseas. You can hire a couple with no problem without needing a company like mine, an agency. And so she tried it. It failed. She goes, please just do it for me. And so I did. I piloted a program with 2 of my clients. Each of them hired 2 VAs, and I forgot about it. A month later, on July 10th, 2023, I got on my calendar this call that I had scheduled a month before as a check-in. Totally forgot about it. Both of them said, this is the best thing you've ever done for us. Your medical billing is fine. Your coaching's great, but this is transformational. This is all you should ever do. Can I hire another? And I literally like sat back and went, I guess that's what I'm doing for the rest of my life now, because there was just, that was the impact I'd been chasing. That was my therapist who helped me stand and walk. That was the equivalent of helping a business owner in my mind, was helping them stand and walk with. And it was so great because I got to leverage a talent and passion that I have with this great love for the international community that I had developed. And that's how I got into it. It just changed my whole world. And I mean this respectfully, but we've grown pretty aggressively ever since. We've grown 100% year over year. And now we have almost 300 VAs working in our team. It's just been a gift. Honestly, I tell people this, Brandon, this came from somewhere else. I feel like I'm a steward of this gift that I'm just doing the best I can with.
Well, and I believe both of us have intention, purpose.
Yes.
And we solve our purpose through business. But I think our business is a byproduct of trying to achieve purpose, if that makes sense.
100%.
And what I think is so exciting about this is, one, I think you're changing a respect level in an entire society. So you are working and employing and giving people opportunities in countries that have never seen what we as Americans have seen. And so in many ways, you're creating an opportunity of enhancing life like nothing they've ever experienced. I've met several physical therapists from India and the Philippines. And see, the thing with India is, you can have the richest of rich and the poorest of poor. There's this huge
dream.
So like what life looks like in India could be 2 completely different realities. Whereas I think in the Philippines, and you may disagree with me, it's generalized poverty. Like it does not have the social divide the way that India has. Would you agree?
100%.
And so people are just, I think we've always seen what I'm going to call as the international workforce as India. That's how we always, for the 1980s and 1990s, I believe a lot of it was call centers in India, and it created a really bad kind of like marketing package of what this meant. And I think it's not until the last 10 years where it's really changed the vision. And the vision is becoming, we're seeing it now in South America, we're seeing it in the Philippines, we're seeing it. What it is it's tapping into talent that normally never had opportunities. Correct. So you're unlocking opportunities to connect talent at a different level. And I think, like anything, people take advantage of stuff, but I think it's actually done some incredible things. So I'm all about giving U.S. opportunities. I am all about that. But the reality is there's a lot of work that our country doesn't want to do.
It's
and
true.
There's a work ethic that not everyone has. And I was just talking to Scott, and we both agreed right now, currently, it is the most challenging thing ever to find someone with integrity, ethics, and what I'm going to say is work ethic ability in the US. And what I found is if I were to evaluate someone's talent, and 3 years ago, the talent I would value at 25, that same person wants $45 to $50 an hour here.
Exactly.
And so when I go offshore, depending, what I get for $20 there is greater than what I get for $50 here. And that's the hard truth.
That's the bottom line on the like the number side of it. I think what's really powerful is what changes in the company's culture when you have anyone. It doesn't matter if they're overseas or not, but when you get someone who comes in who really cares with high intention and integrity, it transforms the entire culture. And I agree. I think culturally in the United States, we are on a slippery slope. I think everyone who's listening is like, yep, the owners of these companies aren't in that mindset, in my opinion. They're the ones who've like taken on the risk. They've taken on all that, like you just start working when you own a business. There's no question around it. And it's all for impact, hopefully some increased income. But when you hire anyone who comes in with that kind of energy, it's contagious. And I do believe it actually models it in a way that maybe some Americans have just never seen, because my clients, I think this is something that is my favorite thing to hear, is that when my clients say that the Filipino they hire doesn't just do a great job, but they work so hard, it makes the Americans work harder. When I hear that, that is by far the greatest feedback I ever hear, because what I'm hearing is that Filipino is an equal part of the team, number one, which is something that we help people figure out because that's not organic. The second thing is that people in the United States, that the other Americans are actually really good people. They just needed someone to kind of give them some reason for trying harder, someone to chase, a model of how to do it. So I don't think that Americans necessarily are bad, which is the reason I say that, Brandon. I know you don't think that, but I was speaking at a conference recently that you were at, and I started off, I was like, so why is it hard to recruit? And I mean, the hands that went up and just said, well, people are just the worst. All these kids come out, they don't want any work and they want all this money. And then Greg Todd, our common friend, stood up at his deal and he said, you guys want to make as much money with as little work as possible too. So shut up. He just said the same thing. And it made me laugh, because there's nothing wrong with like wanting to maximize your money for your time. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that we're losing our way around this thing called like, yeah, we just have lost the necessity. And overseas, that necessity is baked in. When people I talk to overseas, when they cry because they bought their first refrigerator, I don't know what that feels like, Brandon. Yeah. Like, what does that even, I mean, that blows my mind. Or, hey, they take care of their family, their older population. They have them in their homes. Mm-hmm. So when they take care of someone in their home, it's like, yeah, our culture doesn't do that as much. So when they have money to do that, the meaning of that job, they don't care what the tasks are. They'll do insurance verification. They'll do, front office reception work that Americans are just, they show up like they're doing their employers a favor because they don't want to do it. And they don't have to. There's no necessity. But over there, it's like those seemingly annoying tasks in America are gateways to a brighter future for them. It's a really interesting thing.
I think there's this conflict between what I'm calling the immigrant mindset.
Love that.
And entitlement. And so when I look at it and I say it in this way, I'm just being honest. And I grew up middle class, Jewish, the whole bit. Like, don't get me wrong. Thankfully, I had a grandfather that was a product of the Depression and made me know it every time he met with me. But my viewpoint, I remember, so I had an employee, she still works for me, but she came to me about 7 years ago and she was crying. And I said, she's originally from Mexico. She's a child development specialist for us. She immigrated to our country and she's crying. I said, hey, what's going on? She said, I just paid off my entire home because of you.
Wow.
And I said, you didn't pay it off because of me. You paid it off because of you.
Right.
You did the work. So I can give you the vehicle, but you made it, you fueled it. You made it happen. And I think that as we're looking at this immigrant mindset, it's about bringing people together that are fighting for freedom, that believe in what they do, and that it's more than just a transaction. And so my viewpoint, even with the Greg Todd side of things, is own your truth. You want to win the lottery, win the lottery. You want to sit and watch TV all day, sit and watch the TV all day. But don't get upset with me because I want someone who wants something different.
Yeah.
And I want someone that shows up. When I say so, I say it this way. Will, you say, Brandon, I want a red car. I bring you a blue car. You're like, did you not listen to me? I want a red car.
Right.
So don't punish me because you're not a red car and I want a red car. And I think that's what's happening right now. I just got 207 job applications in a week. Not one is worthy. And I'm not exaggerating, 97%, that high, 97% lied on their resume in some way. And they acknowledged when I met with them that they were lying, but they had one objective and one objective only. What was their objective? They wanted to get a job, and they didn't care the repercussions it had for me. They didn't care what I wanted. They cared what they wanted. So that's my point, is this is a two-way flow. How are we creating that component? And so when I look at this virtual assistant revolution, what I recognize is there is such a desire of that two-way. How do I serve? How do I bring together? How do I create? And so it's qualitatively how meaningful the work is to the people that gets me excited.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Warren Buffett says something that reminded me of what you were talking about, this thing called intelligence, integrity, and energy. That's all we ever need. In an A player, there's different ways of defining those terms, but I love that simplicity of intelligence, the energy, and the integrity. And we can't measure for all three of those things very well in the interview process. That's why working interviews are huge. One of our clients, Brandon, for example, they're hiring twice as many VAs right now than they need. They need 5, but they're hiring 10. And they're being transparent and open with their people, but they're saying, hey, listen, we're hiring 10, but we are only keeping 5. And after 60 days, we're going to keep. And the people overseas in America, could you imagine doing that? Like, people would be like, well, forget it, because I need to keep up my Instagram account or whatever, that image. Whereas like in the Philippines, they're like, you're giving me a shot, I'm in. And that, like, it's just a totally different mentality, and it helps people because they're integrous, they're intelligent. There's a necessity that almost drives those 3 factors for cultures that don't have the affluence that America has. And it's almost like you have to own a business to get there in America.
And I do think to a certain extent, there's a level of entitlement in America.
For sure.
So I should be able to make what I want to make. I should be able to have that. I should be able to have my Fridays off. I should be able to, there's not, and I think that's where, like, the message that my grandfather told me from day one was, whatever is given today is not guaranteed for tomorrow. And so as you look at what you do, don't look at what's in front of you, look at what you can create for tomorrow. Yeah. And so at 15 years old, I went and I was the gringo busboy. And I quickly recognized, not because there's a difference when you work hard for desire and you work hard for necessity.
There's a difference.
I think that's one of the things that's going on is when we're tapping into this virtual assistant market, there is more of a desire to work for necessity, but they value it because necessity is not given there, whereas necessity is given here, in my opinion.
Agreed. And I think they build on each other. You know, over there's this high necessity because of the poverty line. So they start showing up. But what's really interesting is that when you start in that place and you're willing to do whatever it takes to pay the bills and maybe even get a little ahead, then the desire starts to build and stack in a healthy way, because then it's like, yeah, what else can I do to create value? And it's so powerful to see individuals who decide to open their own businesses. We've had a number of VAs who start their own companies as a result of like this entry point down the road. And to me, I believe that conscious capitalism is one of the most effective tools that we can use in the world to change the world positively. And notice how I said conscious capitalism.
Yeah.
You know, because we tend to like get political around communism, capitalism. It's like, well, no, there's this thing called conscious capitalism where the entire intent isn't just to increase the income and the freedom of the owners and investors, which I believe is completely valid and important. Like in healthcare, we screw that piece up probably more than anything. But there's other thing called but there's enough meat on the bone of the business to not just take care of your employees and give them the vehicle to pay off their house like you did, right? But also create a vehicle for them to give back to the world at large. Take expeditions to countries like the Philippines or Africa and use that surplus to help better the lives of others. And then there's a whole argument on how to do that. But the point is that through building this like conscious capitalistic effort that we do, it's not just about improving our lifestyle. It's a vehicle. I love how you said that. It's a vehicle for a lot of people to get where they could go if they're driven, if they're integrous, if they're willing to just chime in and join the team. And in America, that's hard. We have an entitlement here of like, well, I shouldn't have to. And those Instagram people make it seem like they don't do anything except vacation. And that sets this weird precedent. I think that's my biggest take on that is I think that's where a lot of our programming is getting messed up is around that social media piece. But
yeah, I think entertainment in general, whether it's TV, social media, etc. And I think that we don't get taught our why. Like
yeah,
at the end of the day, like I'm still amazed by this notion. Your procedural manual for your virtual assistants, I bet you is thicker than anything you ever received on how to live, your why for being here, your purpose, your intention. And I say it of like, I know we come from two different religious backgrounds, which I think is beautiful.
yeah,
But I think so much of us rely on religion to help us identify procedurally why we're here.
right.
And so when I look at this and I think like those that don't have anchor points in their life that drive the function of waking up every day, you know, when you see, hey, I want to party and I wanted this and I wanted that. And that's why actually what we find is that the sickest people are people that often find their dreams too young in life because they're like, what else do I have to live for? What is that, you know, that drive? And so as we're looking at private practices and we're looking at the dream, the American dream, which is the American dream is to have a freedom in which to create something that's bigger than ourselves, in my opinion. What do you think is the biggest misconception that private practice owners may have about offshoring virtual assistants versus hiring talent onshore?
Yeah, that it hurts the patient and or the team experience for the American employees. That's the biggest misconception by far. They're all kind of attracted to the money savings. They don't know what's possible. And what's possible is that person comes in with perspective and work ethic. And when that comes into the team works harder. It will polarize your C players. C players see that as a huge disruption to the game that they're playing behind the scenes, which is, I think, a great thing. But that would be the problem that you would get is that you'd have people, and you have some racism. That's happened to a sprinkling of places where I've had clients say, yeah, I didn't know that some of my team was racist, but they were straight up like against, you know, one of those people coming over. And I was like, whoa, you know, but useful information in decision-making as an owner. And then when it came to the patient experience, that even surprised me a little bit when I started this journey. I thought the patient experience would be a lateral one because I saw that in my billing company. You'd bring the Filipino in, you'd really treat them as an equal member of the team, and then you introduce them with trust to the client. With patients, what we're finding is they just care about how they feel. So we're all worried about, you know, the older population of a certain political persuasion and how they're going to handle working with someone who on the phone who's from a different country. But we've never once had the problem where someone has complained to us about the English, because you hire them and you hear their English before you hire them. So you wouldn't hire someone with subpar English. And so on the phone, what we've learned is that because there's so much intentionality, the only problem I've heard, and this has happened a few times, is that the Filipino gets so enwrapped with the conversation that they're not moving on. Like, they're like, well, tell me more about that. Oh, and how's your day going? You have a cat? No way. Like, they're just right in there at it's the problem we want, which is that you want people to want to connect with their patients at such a personal level. We even have some Filipinos who are behind monitors. This is case by case, but like I've never heard of a bad example where after some transition, the patients come in and there's a monitor and there's a Filipino behind the monitor. And it's like, hey, Ron, how's it going today? How's your knee? And it's the same conversation with higher intentionality. And so that at the end of the day, it's about relationship. That's why I think people are afraid of implementing it. But that's what's crazy is that you can actually increase the connection and relationship to your patients and your team by bringing someone in who has the intelligence, who has the right motivation. It's really cool to watch.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I want to remind everyone is in our hospital system, there is a huge percentage of nursing and medical professionals who have come from the Philippines to the US. So I actually find that in the last, again, 10 years, we're becoming more aware that this diversity of different cultures and ethnic backgrounds is becoming more populated, both on site as well as offshore from these other countries. Now, I will tell you the number one misconception that I see outside of what you said.
Please.
Number one misconception that I've seen is that offshore talent does not bring the same level of intelligence as onshore talent. And that is 100% incorrect. I have dealt with physical therapists from the Philippines who have helped my company. I have dealt with people who have the equivalent of masters and PhDs. There is an incredible source of education, knowledge, intelligence, way beyond what we can tap into here. And I'm not trying to say, oh my gosh, move your whole company to the Philippines, but I am saying one of the things I always tell people, they ask me, Brandon, you own a medical billing company. Do I outsource billing? Do I offshore my virtual assistant? All those questions. I have one answer to every single one of those questions. Are you ready for the one answer?
I'm so curious.
Find the best talent. Find the best talent. If I have the best talent as a third-party billing company, then come to me. If you can find better talent in-house, go.
Yeah.
Where can you find the best talent? So if Will's going to get me a nurse in the Philippines who can help troubleshoot all our triage questions, great. We're going to go there. I don't need to go to the US. But if someone lands on my door tomorrow and she's better talent, I'm going to go to where the best talent resists that I can afford. So at the end of the day, I set my budget and I say, and honestly, Will, I'm doing this right now with you all. I have you looking for someone for me, and I'm looking for someone, 207 applications, and I am seeing whoever has the best talent.
That's so smart, by the way. By the way, you're doing something that is so brilliant, because we should be, this isn't just me. This is, I think, Peter Drucker. He says that we should outsource everything in our business that isn't directly tied to the core service or product that we do. What he's saying is, if we can keep our focus and energy only on the thing that makes us money. So being in PTO, TSLP, that would be the care that we give. So what that means is, like, oftentimes I talk to people who are like, I want to start my own billing. I'm bringing my billing in-house. I'm always like, oh my goodness. Like, why would you, like, it's a totally different business. It's a different industry. Like, go to Brandon's company. Don't, like, in my world, it's just the weirdest. So, like, when it comes to recruiting, we don't realize that is something you can outsource. And so outsourcing multiple options is so smart, because then you find the best fit. And I will tell you, I'm looking at to hire a CEO to run my company right now so that I can focus on promotion. My favorite thing is promoting what we do. And so I'm looking to hire a CEO. I'm a recruiting expert, but I've never hired a recruiter. I've never hired a CEO for my business. So I hired a firm, Kern & Ferry. It's a weird name. And so I just did my first round of interviews yesterday, and they were expensive, but it was one of those things, Brandon, where I'm like, I put a lot of energy into it, but it's not in the doingness of it. It's in the thinking. That's what we need to realize as leaders. Our greatest value isn't what we do. It's in our logic.
Yep.
And the only way to grow a real business that scales, truly scales, is that the leader owner spends their time in judgment and thinking more than doing, by far. And it feels sinful for medical providers. It's like, well, I'm a clinician first and foremost. I'm like, well, we got to get out of that mindset. You're a healer first and foremost. A healer is so much more than just clinical work. A healer can build teams that heal the world. And so in this process of hiring people, I did my first round yesterday, and I literally told my wife last night, I'm like, this is so smart that I outsourced that, because if I can outsource this thing that I would even erroneously think I'm an expert to do, I would have not gotten as far or as quickly or as successful as I'm doing right now. And it will change my whole world. I'm not stressed. I'm excited. I'm all these things. So I'm glad that you're doing that. You kind of put effort in around those things. You outsource where you can get support, and you pick the best talent.
Well, and my viewpoint is, don't get stuck. Like, the worst thing I could do is say, nope, I need to hire this person. I'm like, nope, just keep it flowing. So even very transparently, I was very specific in what I'm looking for. Someone came in that does not fit my criteria, and I'm challenging myself. I'm like, consider looking outside the box. That might mean that I have to hire someone in Mississippi. I was not looking to hire someone in Mississippi. But if the top talent is in Mississippi,
You're going to
I'm going to hire
Mississippi.
them in Mississippi. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my point to everyone is let's stop looking at like, oh, do I do a virtual assistant? Do I do it? I'm like, go after whatever gets you the best talent. So here's
Amen.
my budget. I'm going to go after it, boom, and see what lands. So even the idea of, you said someone asks you if they should outsource billing or bring it in-house. My viewpoint is not like you kind of said, well, outsource to the expert. I'm like, either you're hiring the expert in-house
Sure.
or you're outsourcing to an expert, but you need to hire the expert. That's what
the
we
best
both
expert
agree
you can find for sure. The best expert. I love that.
So as we look at this, what do you think is the scariest thing for new private practices when they're confronting VA hiring Philippines? What do you think is their first crazy fear and question?
Their biggest fear is that they're making a huge financial mistake and like they're committing to this whole thing that doesn't work. And that's, I get it. Like they're super worried that they're going to bring someone in from overseas. It's going to offend their team. Their patients are going to hate it. They're not going to know what to give them to do because they've never worked with overseas. It's a lot of things. It's not just one thing. I think it's the accumulation of all that they don't know about the experience, having never experienced it. And so I think it's really important to find a company that will do things like not make you sign long-term contracts, lets you go month to month. You know, when I'm coaching people, and it's funny, Brandon, because I'm so specific on who I work with now, I spend a lot of time coaching people when I don't think it's a fit for them to not hire overseas talent, because there are people, in my opinion, that's not a fit for. And then there's also people who I think that I'm not a fit for as a business. I will actually refer them to other companies. And this is one of those things where it's like, I get into their heads and help them understand what it is that they would want. But either way, no matter what they do, if they're going to try the VA thing, just to pilot it. So if you don't have a long-term contract, you bring it in, you tell your team, hey, I'm piloting this idea. If you hire the right company, they'll help you kind of figure out. It's not a hard muscle to work with someone overseas virtually, but it is a new muscle. So that company needs to be there to buffer that, to show you what to do. They're not going to tell you how to like give them things to do overall, but like, how do you meet with them? How do you develop the cultural fit, the relationship, communication systems? All of that should be something that company helps with. And so that's how you overcome it. But like the mindset is, and this isn't just for VAs. Anytime we're doing anything new, we're piloting it. We're going to introduce an AI program. We're piloting the program. You can't really pilot an EMR change, but that's a different story that we could do a totally different episode on, because I've got strong feelings on how to implement EMRs. That anything that we can unwind in a 30 to 60 day process is worth a pilot if it seems like the value proposition matches our vision. It's just worth that pilot and how we communicate it.
100%. 100%. So leave me with this last thing. Are you ready?
Yes. Let's go.
What's one strategy for a private practice to train a VA successfully?
Yes. This is going to seem really simple, but this has been the most effective thing I've seen happen. We call it putting the VA on your hip. And what I mean by that is you put them on the screen on a laptop and you keep them on all day, and you walk around the clinic with them and they just watch what you do. For people who have good systems in place, this is a great start because they'll get to know the relationships anyway by doing this. People who don't have great systems, this is the best start because this forces them to think of things that they could give them. So it's like they'll just kind of awkwardly be carrying them around all day and then like, oh yeah, and I'm going to answer the phones now. Do you have experience doing that? Okay, watch me do it. And then it forces these cycles of training that they never would have thought if they're just doing an hour call once a day and then they're working behind the scenes to build training that they're going to schedule later. I tell people, turn on the VA on a computer and just put them on your hip, walk them around, give it to another team member, let them cross-train. It becomes kind of comical, but it's just like if you hired an American and they physically showed up, what would you do? Well, you'd be forced to like figure it out in real time because they're sitting there staring at you looking like, what do I do now?
Love it. Love it. Well, tell everyone how to get in touch with you. Obviously, you can go to virtualrockstar.com. We'll have stuff in the show notes, but anywhere else where they can get more from Will Humphreys.
Oh, you're so nice. Well, listen, guys, I have my podcast, the Willpower Podcast. Brandon Seigel's been one of my star guests of that show. You can reach out to me at will@virtualrockstar.com. If you want to learn more about VAs, just go to the website, virtualrockstar.com, and there's a whole discovery process. There's no sales like pressure. You can go learn about it. Really, our whole thing is just educating the industries about the options. And we'll be very clear if it's a good fit for you or not. Honestly, this is never something we want to push because you hurt the VA, you hurt the company. It's just nobody wins in those cases. But Brandon, thank you so much for the privilege of being on this amazing show. It's such a gift to be with you.
Well, thank you, Will. I appreciate you being on the show, and I appreciate each and every one of you that tune in each week. Don't forget to share us with all your colleagues. Don't forget to write a positive 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And don't forget, together we can thrive, not just survive. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. Exciting news. We're now available everywhere, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to YouTube or anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts. So watch, listen, and reach out. If you love this episode, please drop a 5-star review. It truly means the world to me. Are you looking for more ways to elevate your practice? If so, now is your chance. Reach out, go to my website, or email me at brandon@wellnessworksmp.com. And remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.